Tashdele to everyone, and welcome to our second class of Sakya Legshe, Chapter 1, Verse 2, Examining the Vice, Verse 2. We begin with this verse, which is a verse of dedication. And this particular verse is dedicated towards the deity Hayagriva. And it has a very significant meaning because since yesterday, we have started the Hayagriva retreat at Sakya Monastery. So it's an annual retreat. We weren't able to hold the retreat during the 2 years of COVID restrictions. But since last year, we had resumed having the annual retreat here at Sakya Monastery. It's a 10 days retreat of the deity Hayagriva, the wrathful incarnate of Avalokiteshvara. So in the symbolism of being in relevance with this event, and hoping that this retreat also helps us with our classes, I have written this verse. So, shira usir trove moni tamche ishi kempe namrulba tage rabsir jigde nili se tendripema wanchen bachasi. So this particular verse, what it means is that, so I've already translated it, because originally we were planning to have the class yesterday, so we just had to postpone it to today. So therefore, the nature of excellent shining ray of light. And the excellent shining ray of light is the light of, is the very nature of every conventional phenomena. Embodiment of the omniscient wisdom mind. So the mind that is of the omniscient wisdom, holding the wisdom every moment. Most excellently name to wake the wolf from sleep of self-grasping ignorance. I prostrate to you, Almighty Lotus Hayagriva. So with this verse as a form of auspiciousness, let us begin our class. So today's verse, first let me read the entire verse, and then I will read each portion, each word 4 times, each line 4 times. Kewo yunde yume pe langtor lodre demba ke dul tang drebe chak che nam kablen doi demba she. So notice that I'm still continuing the rule pertaining to the verse, that is couple, 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 single. So pair, 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 single. So it 2 syllable together, 2 syllable together, 2 syllable together, and a single syllable. So 2, 2, 2, 1. This is the rhythm. This is the sort of rhythm that we are applying for this verse. Kewo yunde yume pe langtor lodre tempa ke dul tang drebe chak che nam kablen doi lempa she. Kewo yunde yume pe langtor lodre tempa ke dul tang drebe chak che nam kablen doi lempa she. Also notice the words which are by nature more masculine in their pronunciation. Notice that I'm putting a little more emphasis while pronouncing them to to exaggerate the individual sound of that particular letter. So, keo yunde yume pe. So, when I'm reading each syllable, also understand that sometimes the sounds such as pa hakyuku, which last times we had the word wo, I will be stretching the sound, but the stretching would be exaggerated, meaning that I will stretch it a little bit longer than what normally is being pronounced while talking. And this is to make sure that we understand that the sound is stretched. So notice when I'm reading it as a whole line, the stretching does not happen to the extent that I am stretching it while pronouncing it individually, and that's because of the exaggeration and emphasis on the very sound manipulation by the combination of the ha and kiku. Kiu yunde yume be langtor lodru tempa ke dultan trebe chakchenam kablen doi nembar she. Okay, so now let me read each individual word 4 times. Ke, ke, ke. So I will be, for few of the initial classes, I will be reading each syllable 4 times. This is so that many of you can get used to the syllable reading. And by the 5th or 6th class, I will be reading the word instead of the syllable. So I won't be repeating syllable 4 times. I will be repeating the entire, I will repeat the entire word 4 times. But at the moment, I will be repeating each syllable 4 times. And this is so that those who are relatively newer to the concept of syllable reading, you can get an idea. Ke, 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 wo, 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 ke wo, ke wo, ke wo, ke wo, ke wo, yun. So please notice that the sound is yun and not yon. So this happens when you emphasize too much on the sound of na. So instead of yun, it will become yon. So this is the incorrect pronunciation. So make sure that what you do is that you pronounce it more subtly. So it becomes yun, 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 yon. So other thing is that you can notice that when you say yun, the tip of your tongue is touching at the tip of your tongue is at behind the first 2 frontal teeth. So you'll notice that the tip is there when you say yun. But when you say yon, you'll notice that more towards the middle part of your tongue is touching the teeth. So this is something you can experiment and try to observe. When you say yun, the tip is touching the teeth. When you say yon, more like the middle region of your tongue is touching the frontal teeth. So please observe that. Yun, 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 yun. Te, 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 te. So one might ask, why not emphasize the sound of na here? When we say yun, why not ten? Definitely you can emphasize it. It's just a preference of the sound and also a little bit of influence by a person's regional dialect, because of which some sounds, when in some cases, in some places, are pronounced more with a more emphasis. In some places, it is done with a more subtlety. Yun, 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 te, 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 yun te, yun te, yun te, yun te, kiu, yun te, kiu, yun te, kiu, yun te, kiu, yun te, yu, 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 me, 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 yu, me, yu, me, yu, me, yu, me, yu, me. So now when you pronounce it together, you'll notice that the word yu and me finishes with the same suffix letter, ta. So what you do is that you try to make the sound of the first ta when you read them together to be more subtle. Otherwise, the sound becomes too rigid. It becomes too solid. It becomes, instead of an entire word, it seems that we are trying to push in two syllable that does not want to combine as a single sound. Instead, want to emphasize their own individual sound. If we say yu me, the sound is too hard, and since ta as a suffix has a more influence as a more masculine sound, it's more what it does is that the sound are more cut rather than stretched. So what you do is that you try to settle it down a little bit. So instead of yud me, and in some cases you'll also hear yud me. And this is because of too much emphasis on the individual sound of ta. So instead of yu, it becomes yu, it becomes yut. So when you bring in the element of subtlety here, what happens is that the sound changes to yume. So you see that it's almost as if the suffix letter ta does not exist here. So yume, yume, instead of yume. It's not incorrect to say yume, but the sound is too discontinued because of the great emphasis on the suffix letter. And in case of yutme or yutme, the sound becomes even more emphasized. So in order to retain that particular flow with the 2221, what you do is that you settle down the sound of the first suffix ta. So instead of yume, it becomes, instead of yume, it becomes yume. So there is a transition from yo to me without strongly emphasizing on the sound of ta, which is not incorrect, but it sounds a little strange when you do that. And the more you emphasize, it becomes an individual unit, not acting as a 2221, but instead sounds like 22111. So yume, yume. But when you're pronouncing it individually, make sure that you're doing justice to the suffix letter. So yu. But when you are combining it, yume, yu, me, yu, me, yu, me, yu, me, yume, 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 be. Now notice notice the way I'm pronouncing it. It's in comparison to the pronunciation that it will manifest itself while reading as a part of this particular line. You'll see that the stretch is not as exaggerated as it will be when I will read it as an individual unit. Be. So when I will read it individually, it will be be. You see that the sound is stretching. Be. 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 Now one must ask that why am I exaggerating the sound this much in contrast to the actual sound when it becomes a part of this particular line? Why do I emphasize so much? That is because in order to show the influence of that sound over the entire syllable, and to show that how some sound are capable of stretching the sound of the foundation of name, and how some sound like ta are capable of cutting short the sound, not letting it stretched out. So that is the reason why the exaggeration of the sound is done here. But when you read it, pe, it becomes pe, pe. So kêu yuan de yuan me pe, kêu yuan de yuan me pe, kêu yuan de yuan me pe. Also understand that you are not, you cannot pronounce it as pe. Then what happens is that there isn't even a slight stretch of the sound. There isn't a slight stretching of the sound. So you can do that, but then there will be too much exaggeration on pe. But if you do it in the manner, you'll do it like you'll find that the sound is cut. So the very function of hakikuyi is not there. So or so instead of stretching it too much, you just leave it there. Yun, then yu me lang 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 thor 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 lang thor lang thor lang thor lang thor lo 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 tu 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 tu. Okay, so we notice here that sounds such as sa and ta, they're capable of cutting the sound, meaning that it is capable of making the sound shorter. In contrast to the sound hakyuguyi, where the sound is stretched out. So a great emphasis is also made in order to highlight the very function of these sounds, because these sounds are suffix letter, and in this case it's not the suffix letter, but in this case it's the suffix letter. And in these cases we must understand that the sound do change, and the very sound of the foundation of name, which is the main sound, the key sound of the particular word, is being changed or manipulated by the suffix letter, or in this case, the particular connective particle. So to highlight that very function, we have to sometimes, individually reading it, we have to exaggerate a little bit. If the sound is cut short a little bit, we try to cut it even more to make it sound more apparent that it's cutting the sound. So lo tru. So never lo tru, you just cut the sound. Lo tru, lo tru, lo tru, lo tru. Then, 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 pa, 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 tempa, 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 tempa. Notice that when I was reading the syllable individually, I was focusing on the sound na to end it with a strong na, then. But when I associate this with the second syllable, what I did is that I made the sound of na to be more subtle. So, tempa, tempa, instead of tenpa, tempa, 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 tempa. Lang thor lo tru, 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 tempa. Make sure that you emphasize this enough. Not too much, otherwise it becomes a very strong rolling R sound. Too much of R. But make sure that you add a little bit of R in here. So lang thor, lang thor. But if you overemphasize, it becomes lang thor, which is not correct. So lang thor. A little bit of emphasis there. Lang thor, lo tru, lang thor, lo tru, tempa. Lang thor, lo tru, tempa. Lang thor, lo tru, tempa. Ke, 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 ke. Lang thor, lo tru, tempa, 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 ke. Dul, 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 dul. Thang, 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 thang. Dul thang, dul thang, dul thang, dul thang. De, 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 de. Pe, 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 je pe, je pe, je pe, je pe. So also notice here the thing that I was saying when I'm reading it individually, the stretching is exaggerated to an extent, but when I'm reading it as a whole unit, the exaggeration is limited. Dul tang je pe, dul tang je pe, dul tang je pe, dul tang je pe, dul tang je pe. Cha, 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 cha. Che, 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 che. Chok che, chok che, chok che, chok che, chok che. Dul tang je pe, 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 chok che. Nam, nam, nam. nam. Dul tang debe chakche 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 nam. Cup, 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 cup. So here I'm also exaggerating the sound of pa to tell everyone that the sound when it's ending with pa, it should have an element of p at the end. So cup, cup. So if I exaggerate the sound, cup. But that's not the correct pronunciation. It's cup. And the emphasis should be made between cup. For example, it's not a word, but it's just an example. So it's an example why one should do this in this manner. So these two sounds, one is ending with p, and the other one is ending with p. So cup and cup, 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 cup. So you'll see that it's rather apparent, the sound. It's not like the sound is subtly different. It's very apparent. One ends with p, other one ends with p. And when I'm reading it individually, the reason I am emphasizing greatly on p is so that when you read, you'll have the habit of emphasizing it at the point of p. And though it may not be as apparent as I'm making it right now, as exaggerated as I'm making it now, but there is a subtle p here. So cup, 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 cup. So I hope that everyone is able to hear the subtle, the difference between these two. So cup, 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 cup. You will hear people pronouncing this as cup, and that is something that's very normal. Also, it's something that's also very widely mispronounced. But the emphasis when you do it, when you're reading it, so this is the benefit of doing a syllable reading, because in syllable reading you can exaggerate the sound when reading a syllable individually in a way that you can emphasize greatly on the suffix letter. This is not possible when you're reading each word at a time. And then similarly, if you're reading character, if you're doing character reading, you can emphasize and exaggerate on each character, which is not possible in syllable reading. Normally, when we learn reading, we classify it in 5 different levels. The first one definitely introducing each character, and then combination of the consonants and vowels, combination of two consonants, combination of a consonant and a vowel, and then when you do the syllable reading, combination of structure made out of consonants and vowel. Then when you do the word reading, it's a combination of 2 syllable or more than 2 syllable when you're doing the word reading. And then finally, when you're doing the reading of an entire line or a verse, then they have different rules. For example, here we follow the rhythm that is 2-2-2-1. Similarly, there are rules, and then there are nuances depending on which particular emotion or which particular context of emotion a particular word is used. There will be different nuances, and the sound will change accordingly, definitely. Same word, but used in a different condition, the sound will change. But still, just for reading, we normally have these 5 different classifications where we try to perfect each level at each. We try to perfect the sound. We try to perfect the sound at each level so that at the end the sound comes quite clear. So cup, 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 lin, 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 lin. So you have heard that I have emphasized the sound of n here, lin. But now when I do the word reading, habne, see, it becomes more subtle. So this is how you actually understand why each level of reading is important. Habne, 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 to, 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 to. Make sure that the sound is coming out very strongly here, because it's a combination of a header letter, which is ra, which itself is a more masculine sound, with tha, which is a semi-masculine sound here as a as a foundation of name. It's a semi-masculine sound, and so to. You can stretch the sound with the vowel to, to, to. The sound without the vowel would be ta. So with the vowel, it becomes to, to, e, 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 e. So in this particular stage of reading, you have the you have the uh, you have the freedom of being able to exaggerate a particular letter as a sound. So, yi. See how I'm cutting short the sound, yi. But when I'm reading it together, it's doi. It's not as strong as when I'm reading it individual. But I do that so that we have the mental impression that the sound is shortened here. And this also helps with understanding, because these are not these are very important elements of grammatical structure. These are connective particles, and just by listening to which sound, is it the stretching or is it the sound that's cut short, we understand, oh, it is the 6th grammatical case, it is the 3rd grammatical case. Yi, 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 toi, 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 toi. And even comparison to the way I'm exaggerating it as a syllable, this particular structure as a combination of 2 syllable is different. So the emphasis and the exaggeration becomes more subtle. Kable doi, kable doi, kable doi, kable doi. But still, I do not lose the integrity of the syllable when I'm combining it as a word. I'm still doing justice to the sound that is the combination of this of the letters. It's there, more subtle, but it's still there. Kable, kable doi, len, 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 par, 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 lemper, 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 kable doi, lemper, kable doi, lemper, kable doi, lemper, kable doi, lemper, shit, 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 kable doi, lemper, shit, kable doi, lemper, shit. Kablen doi lemper shit. Kablen doi lemper shit. Kablen doi lemper shit. Keu yuen ten yuen me be. Lang thor lo tru tempa ke. Dul tang trebe. Chak che nam. Kablen doi lemper shit. Keu yuen ten yuen me be. Lang thor lo tru tempa ke. Dul tang trebe. Chak che nam. Kablen doi lemper shit. Keu yuen ten yuen me be. Lang thor lo tru tempa ke. Dul tang trebe. Chak che nam. Kablen doi lemper shit. Keu yuen ten yuen me be. Lang thor lo tru tempa ke. Dul tang trebe. Chak che nam. Kablen doi lemper shit. So we understand that even as a verse, when it comes as the first line, the usual way of reciting it is different from each line. And this is to create the rhythm and the melody to the particular verse. So, keu yuen den yuen me be, lang thor lo tru tempa ke. Dul tang trebe chak chen nam, kablen doi lempa she. Kablen doi lempa she. Keu yuen den yuen me be, lang thor lo tru tempa ke. Dul tang trebe chak chen nam, kablen doi lempa she. So always make the contrast between these two particular sounds. This is shortened, this is stretched. If you are reading it relatively shorter, then make sure that it is even more shorter. If both of them begin to sound the same, that means that you're pronouncing it horribly wrong. Because then you cannot observe the distinction between each of these particles, and then just by listening to someone talking, you're incapable of recognizing what the meaning is, because it will be grammatically grammatically unclear. It will be ambiguous and unclear grammatically, so you won't be able to differentiate. You won't be able to say, oh, this sound is stretching, so it has to be the sixth grammatical case. Oh, this sound is shortened. This has to be the third grammatical case. And then according to one's understanding of these grammatical particles, one may say, oh, this is more like action. This is more like relation between two phenomena. So you can build up the spelling, the understanding, the meaning as well. Okay, so now I have read this entire verse 4 times. So before we go to the English translation, one provided from the book that we had last time, we are referring to one of the book, one written by me. Okay, so before we go there, we'll have someone reciting after me. So do we have volunteers today? Do we have volunteers? Before that, do we have, I think if I'm not wrong, last time it was Tenzin Hual, I think, who wanted to read. So if they are here, so we can continue. So do we have? Because last time I think they have volunteered to read. So you would like to read? Yes. So you, yes, I think.
Okay. Hello.
So would you like to read today?
Yeah. I can.
Yes, sir. So I will be reading it first, so you will be reciting after me, and then at the end I will provide you feedback.
Okay.
Kyo,
Kyo.
kyo,
Kyo.
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 Yunde,
Yonten.
yun,
Yo.
yun,
Yun.
yun,
Yun.
yun,
Yun.
yun,
Yun. Yun.
yun,
Yun.
ya,
Ya.
yo,
Yo.
yun,
Yun.
yun,
Yun.
yun,
Yun.
yun,
Yun.
yun,
Yun.
na,
na,
yun,
yun,
ten,
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 yunten,
yonten,
yunten,
yonte,
yunten,
yonte,
yunten.
yonte.
Yes. So you'll have to work on this. This na, the first na has to be more subtle. So instead of yon, it has to be yun, yun,
Yun,
yun,
yu, yo, yu,
yun,
yun,
yun.
yun,
So notice that the sound which is transitioning, it is happening from yo to yun instead of yo to yon. So instead of yon, it has to be yun,
yun, yun,
yunte,
yun, yunten,
yunte,
yunten,
yunte,
yunten,
yume,
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 yu,
yu, yo,
Ah.
yu,
ya,
ya,
yo,
yo,
yu,
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 yo,
yu,
yo, yu,
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 yume,
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 pe,
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 kewu, yunte, yume, pe,
kewo, yonten, yomete,
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 lang,
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 thor,
tor,
thor,
tor,
thor,
tor,
thor,
tor,
lang thor,
lantor,
lang thor,
langtor,
lang thor,
langtor,
lang thor,
langtor,
lo,
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 ch,
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 lo ch,
lo, ch,
lo ch,
lo, ch,
lo ch,
lo, ch,
lo ch,
lo, ch,
den,
ten,
den,
ten,
den,
ten,
den,
ten,
pa,
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 den pa,
tenpa,
den pa,
tenpa,
den pa,
tenpa,
den pa,
tenpa,
he,
ke,
he,
ke,
he,
ke,
he,
ke,
lang thor, lo ch, den pa, he,
lontur, lotu, tenpa, ke,
lang thor, lo ch, den pa, he,
lantur, lotu, kenpa, ke, tenpa,
lang
ke,
thor, lang thor, lo ch, den pa, he,
lantur, lotu, kenpa, ke,
lang thor, lo ch, den pa, he,
lontur, lotu, tenpa, ke,
lang thor, lo ch, den pa, he,
lantur, lotu, tenpa, ke,
lang thor, lo ch, den pa, he,
lantur, lotu, tenpa, ke,
dul, dul,
tu,
dul,
tul,
dul,
tul,
dul,
tul,
Paṇ,
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 Tam,
Paṇ,
Tang,
Paṇ,
Tang,
Gyaltsen,
Yultang,
Gyaltsen,
Tultang,
Gyaltsen,
Tultang,
Gyaltsen,
Tultang,
Je,
De,
Je,
De,
Je,
De,
Je,
De,
Be,
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 Je, Be,
De, Be,
Je, Be,
De, Be,
Je, Be,
De, Be,
Je, Be,
De, Be,
Chak,
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 Che,
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 Chak, 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 Che,
Nam,
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 Gyaltsen, Je, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Tultang, De, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Gyaltsen, Je, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Tultang, De, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Gyaltsen, Je, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Tultang, De, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Gyaltsen, Je, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Tultang, De, Be, Chak, Che, Nam,
Cup,
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 Len,
Leng,
Len,
Leng,
Len,
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 Cup, Len,
Cup, Len,
Cup, Len,
Cup, Len,
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 Na,
Nga, oi,
Na,
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 Cup, Len,
Cup, Len,
Cup, Len,
Cup, Len,
To,
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 Yi,
I,
Yi,
I,
Yi,
I,
Yi,
U,
To, Yi,
Do, I,
To, Yi,
Do, I,
To, Yi,
Do, I,
To, Yi,
Do, I,
Len,
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 Lem,
Len,
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 Lem,
Par,
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 She,
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 Kable, Doi, Len par 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 She,
Keu, Yunte, Yume, Be,
Geo, Yonten, Yomet, Be,
Langtor, Lotru, Tempa, Ke,
Lantor, Lojo, Tenpa, Ke,
Dultang, Jebe, Chakche, Nam,
Dultang, Jebe, Chakche, Nam,
Kable, Doi, Len par She,
Kable, Doi, Len par She,
Keu, Yunte, Yume, Be,
Geo, Yonten, Yomet, Be,
Langtor, Lotru, Tempa, Ke,
Lantor, Lojo, Tenpa, Ke,
Dultang, Jebe, Chakche, Nam,
Dultang, Jebe, Chakche, Nam,
Kable, Doi, Len par She,
Kable, Doi, Len par She,
Keu, Yunte, Yume, Be,
Geo, Yonten, yomit be,
langthor lotru tempa ke,
lantur lontu tenpa ke,
dultang jebe chakche nam,
tultang jebe chakche nam,
kable doi lempar she,
kaplen doi lenpar she,
kewu yunte yume pe,
keo yomten yomit be,
langthor lotru tempa ke,
lantur lochu tenpa ke,
dultang jebe chakche nam,
tultang jebe chakche nam,
kable doi lempar she.
kaplen doi lenpar she.
Okay, so the things that you have to work on is yun. You
Yun,
have to work on yun, and then you have to work on ch. Other
ch,
than that, most of the rest of the sounds are coming wonderfully. So you have to work on yun and ch.
ch,
Okay,
aha.
so thank you for participating in reading. Lasso. So now we go to the English translation, and then after some example sentence, and then we end today's class. So, okay, so today we have Amandala who raised the hand. So Amandala, you will have to read in the next class. So this is Lasso. So this is something that that is in very common usage, where you see that the sound becomes tre, and for example, in this case, it becomes tre. But yes, this is when you read it in a syllable wise. Like I said, you emphasize the sound in the syllable reading. But if you take the same emphasis in the line reading or the word reading, what happens is that the sound becomes, instead of becoming a unit, for example, a word has to act as a unit at that time. It will be functioning as a syllable. So that's why if you do that, it becomes too much emphasis. So there is other examples where we have del, which becomes trill. For example, let me write it. For example, we have words like and then this becomes, instead of del, it becomes trill. It becomes trill. But the problem is that it becomes overly emphasized. So this is true when it is syllable reading, but the subtlety should always be there when you are making transition into a word reading. So when you have that subtlety, what happens is that you transition from one syllable to the second syllable, and it also protects the integrity of the word itself. The word becomes a whole in that case. But if you're reading syllable wise, definitely. And then you also notice that if you're reading character wise, the emphasis on each of the character will be even much more. Those are in order to improve your pronunciation of the particular character. In this case, to improve your pronunciation as a syllable. But if you take that emphasis to the word reading and line reading, then it will create so much discontinuity in the flow. And especially when you have to read poetry, subtlety should be even more of a priority, because poems are supposed to be more subtle, more smoother in transition in comparison to the analytical compositions, which definitely the words could be more solid, more rigid, more meticulous. But when it's the poem, it has to be softer, more gentler. Transition should be smoother, more subtler. So therefore, especially when you transition to word reading and line reading, there is greater emphasis on smoother transition from one syllable to other. And when you do it in the poetry, in verse form, it becomes even more stronger. So you can see the contrast in some cases when you're reading the scripture. Sometimes what they do is that they overly emphasize on some word. For example, word that have a ra. So when they're reading something, they will read it in a in a uniform manner, and then when there is ra at the end, they will emphasize it. For example, if it's Lhakpa with a ra, for example, if it's a line and then it has this particular word at the end, they will say Lhakpar. They'll emphasize on this. This is something that has to do with more with reading the text rather than the actual rule that we use while reading a particular verse or line. So therefore, subtlety is more important here. But yes, the one you said is true for syllable reading. That when you have the vowel, when you read it in a syllable verse, you emphasize, and so instead of te, it becomes tre. But we don't take that when we are doing the word reading, and especially if it's a word that's a part of a line of a verse, we make it as soft as possible, as smooth as possible. So I hope that this answers your question. Lasso, any other questions regarding this? Does anyone have questions? So definitely, does anyone have questions regarding the pronunciation? Lasso, so if we don't have any questions, then we'll move to the English translation. This is the translation taken from the book. We're referring to that book in order to understand the meaning of the verse, translated by John T. Davenport. So the meaning of the verse here is, people may or may not be knowledgeable, but the wise are judicious in what to do and what to avoid. A magnetic stone is able to extract iron fillings that are mixed in with dust. So this is the translation by John T. Davenport. So I have taken another approach to this. So this is my translation. To examine whether a person has or hasn't good qualities of the wise. So when we talk about the good qualities, it could be good qualities in many ways. A merchant has good qualities in regarding to one's own field of profession. A chef would have good qualities in regards to one's own profession, and so forth, and so on and so forth. Similarly, the wise has a distinguishing good qualities, which makes the wise. So to examine whether a person has or hasn't good qualities of the wise, meaning if we try to understand this line in other way, it means that to examine whether someone is a wise person or not. The one who possesses the superior intellect. So when we talk about the superior intellect, we're talking about an intellect which is capable of distinguishing what is a virtuous and what is a non-virtuous deed. And how do we distinguish virtuous and non-virtuous deeds? If something is bringing harm to oneself and others, that's non-virtuous. Something that's bringing a blissfulness and a harmony to one another, that is virtuous deeds. So if one is able to distinguish, to discern between a virtuous and non-virtuous deed, and thus the very word here is lang tor, which means to adopt. Lang means to adopt, tor means to discard. And the adoption and discarding is based on whether something is virtuous or non-virtuous. To adopt the virtues, to discard the non-virtuous deed. So this is being able to discern it in this manner, being able to distinguish in this manner, being able to understand things in this manner, is the superior intellect. So the one who possesses the superior intellect, the intellect to distinguish virtuous from non-virtuous deed, is the wise man, because the wise does things dependent on his intellectual capacity. And this is one of the good qualities of a wise man. So a wise is the one who possesses the superior intellect to distinguish between virtuous from non-virtuous deed. It is understood that the magnet is capable of separating the iron filings mixed with the heap of sand or dust. So let us change it's the same. So dul has few translation. Dul, the very word dul, it could be understood as dust, grain of sand, particles. So it could be understood as particles. So to examine whether a person has or hasn't good qualities, the one who possesses the superior intellect to distinguish virtuous from non-virtuous deed is the wise. It is understood that the magnet is capable, a magnetic stone is capable of separating the iron filings mixed with the heap of sand. The thing is that both sand or dust and the iron, so sand and dust and the iron filings, both are very, they're not very gross particle. These are more smoother particle, and when they mix together, it's almost very difficult to separate them. But the magnet has the capability of attracting the metal, the iron, and so it is capable of separating, even when the iron filings are mixed with the heap of dust or the sand. So this is an example given to the first statement, the first two lines as a statement. So the superior intellect is given as an example of the magnetic capability of a magnet. The magnetism that a magnet has is the analogy of magnetism is given to the superior intellect to distinguish virtues from non-virtues. And the magnet is the magnet being capable of doing it. The magnet is given as an example. The iron filling is given as an example of the wise. So the thing is that both iron filling and the dust, apparently they look quite the same. Both are grayish in appearance, and both are smooth in texture, and are very subtle particles rather than gross and solid particles. They're very subtle. So if one may look at the mixture of a dust, a heap of sand, a heap of dust, and the iron filings, one might say that this is a dust. But iron filings are useful for many reasons. And so being able to separate it from the dust, which is just a waste, one must use the magnet's capability of magnetism. And similarly, when examining someone, a person, to whether being a wise or not, one should use the superior intellect to distinguish. One must use one's own intellect to see whether someone has the superior intellect to distinguish between virtuous and non-virtuous deed. And so one is capable of being the wise if one has that superior intellect. So this is my take on the verse as a translation. So you may use either. Okay, now the new words. First one is kyo, which means person. Kyo cheting chosun, the person of great, middle, and lesser vehicle. So the three vehicles in Buddhism: the great vehicle, the middle vehicle, and the lesser vehicle. And person is kyo cheting chosun. Yunde, good quality. Lama tambe yunde choni cho. The good qualities of the Lama is best of the best. Chok means best, so best of the best. Sometimes also used as emphasis is best and best. Langtor, adopting and discarding. Langtor sherap mide shen jen. Langtor sherap mide shen jenni. Lumpo jine yen hache. Adopting virtuous habit and discarding non-virtuous habit. So it means that an educated person without the wisdom of adopting and discarding, meaning that wisdom of adopting the virtues and discarding the non-virtues. An educated person who doesn't have that capacity or capability is more dangerous than a fool. Because unlike the fool, the educated person is educated in some way where they can use their ability, their knowledge. But if they don't use the discernment of understanding whether it's a virtuous or non-virtuous habit, then one is able to cause so much destruction. Lotru means intellect, the intellectual capacity, intellect. Lotru chenna, nyepa chungi. Lotru chenna, nyepa chungi pong. The intellectual abandons even the smallest fault. So if the intellectual, if they see a fault within them, it doesn't matter how small it is, they try to abandon that fault by understanding what the consequences of each of these faults are. Dil, it could be understood as particle, grain of sand, or dust. Kangbatir, dil ki kep means to be covered. All the things in this house is covered in dust. Gyaltsen iron filings. Today, we did some experiments related to iron filings. So this could be many different, this could be any of those experiments related to ions or generally related to metals. So it could be an experiment related to magnetism or understanding the nature of metals. Kablento means magnet. Kablento jang yar lento. The magnet is capable of lifting metallic objects. Lempa, to pick. Nye sane chilate lempa. I picked up the cat from the ground. So cat is either chila or shimi. Both of these word can be used. She, understood. I understood the lesson from today's class. So I understood the lesson which was taught in today's class. And with this, we are done with today's lesson. So if someone has a question, please ask away. For some who have sent me your assignments, if I have not answered, I will check and I will answer them. I'll answer them. And some of you have sent me the sentence. You have made sentence. Thank you very much for making this sentence. I will check them and I will send you a feedback as soon as possible. So if you're sending me recordings and everything, and if I'm unable to answer in a few days, I will do it eventually, most probably as soon as possible. So please have patience with me, and thank you very much for having patience with me. Okay, now before I read the verse of dedication, does anyone have any question regarding today's lesson? Any question? Be it regarding the pronunciation or the meaning of word. If you have any questions, please ask away. If not, we will move to the verse of dedication, and then we will most excellently complete today's class. So, any questions regarding today's lesson? Okay, so if you have any questions, make sure that you ask me in the group. Asking me personally directly is also wonderful. If you ask it in the group, many of the fellow students will benefit greatly. Oh, Lasso, please ask away. Lasso,
yeah. It is concerning Chakche, the sentence that you this Takche Gache Yin Takche Gache. It's to experiment or to make some experiment. What this Ga is Takche is to experiment, right? And it's ga. Then I'm not sure. Takche ga. Is it a verb to experiment or to make an experiment? What does it mean exactly? Could you say, please?
Lasso.
Do you hear me well? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
can
sure.
hear you. Lasso.
Okay.
So these three are same. Ka, kashe, kashe, which means some.
Okay.
So this means today we did some experiments. So taoche ka, and che becomes did. So today we did some experiments. So ka means some.
Oh yeah, I understand. Okay. Yeah. Mhm. Yes. Mm.
That's
Yeah,
all.
it's clear. Thank you.
That's all. Does anyone else have any questions regarding today's lesson? Be it with the meaning. So please send the questions. The questions that I've answered here. Make sure that those who have asked it, please send the same in the group. For those who are not able to attend the class, I will answer the same in the group. They can watch the video definitely, but I will also answer it in the group so that it becomes like there is a information there also in the group. And it also helps in making the group more active. The more active the group is, the more one is capable of learning from each other. So understand that we're all here to learn, including myself. So the group is a great facility towards exchanging and sharing information regarding Tibetan. So please make sure you, those who have asked the questions, thank you very much. Please make sure you ask the same in the group and I will write the answer there. So it's a little different when you speak and you write it. I'll write the answer with examples and maybe a little more detail. And for the questions, if it requires examples statement, I will write statement. So understand that I will always use the word statement and not the word sentence. So make sure you do this. And for the next class, the next reading class, we have Amandala who is going to read for the next class. So, and all the verse are being recorded. When we are done with each class, the verse is being recorded. I'm recording the verse and sending it in the group or the channel, where in the channel where you can listen to the verse. There are two tracks, the fast track and the slow track. You can listen to either. It depends on your own self, which one you want to listen to, and then listen to the emphasis on the pronunciation. The slow one has more emphasis on the, you can hear more emphasis towards the pronunciation. So please make sure that you listen to them and then memorize these if possible. Yes, I'll try to answer if I remember clearly. Yes, please.
My question about last class, Kepa Yundin Zut Zinba. So the Zinba is verb or because sometimes depending how we pronounce, it might be a noun or like drawa. The difference.
Yes.
So in the first class, the 这样当波 kepa yundin zo zinba, yang na zo zinba. How do we differentiate when we like first read the verse?
Yes, so it's Zimpa, kepa yundin zo Zimpa, and here pa is the particle that it's the personal. It is understood as the personal particle, meaning that it follows a particular verb, and when it does so, what it tells you is the person that is doing this, or thing that possesses the capacity of doing this. So Zimpa, in my own translation, Zimpa should be understood as the one who beholds the treasury of knowledge, rather than the one who is holding or who is administrating the treasury of knowledge. So instead of the verb, in my translation, it should be understood as
A
the
person.
the noun, the person. So Zimpa. Zimpa.
Zimba.
Yes.
Zimbabwe. As in.
Zimbabwe, as in Zimbabwe. Yes. So yes, in some cases it's better if we write simple, because then you understand that this is the person and not the verb. But
Mm.
yes, this case, we understand that it's a little more confusing than the other cases, because the pronunciation is somewhat similar when we say Zimpa and Zimpa. The more focus, if you are putting more emphasis on the word that is the verb, zin, and then you go to pa, then most probably it's the action rather than the noun. So zimpa would be action, zimpa would be the noun.
So it means that like the first line and the third line will be as a noun, and the second line and the fourth line with is action.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Keba yuan zhe xin ba.
Sakya Legshe du. So you see that the first and the third line, the last word is noun, the second it is action.
Okay, lasso. So in future, when we encounter other verses, how do we know without looking at the English translation whether this is a verb or a noun in such similar cases? Is there a method, or I don't know?
So therefore we're putting great emphasis on pronunciation, because like I said, the way you pronounce it will tell you a lot about what we're reading, one. And then the other would be understanding the meaning of the word in context to the language. So you just associate with what kind of word you're using with that particular word that you want to understand. And if in some case it doesn't make sense to understand it in a certain way, that, for example, like Zimpa or Zimpa, if you're trying to understand it as a verb, but it doesn't stay quite well with the context of the line, then you understand that this is not verb. But if you understand that it stays very well with the context, then you understand it's a verb. So it depends on the context also. So it takes context, pronunciation, to determine whether a same word either is either a verb or a noun. And same with the nuances. Like, for example, we have the word tashi dele. Tashi dele, it's a greeting. If you say tashi dele, it means that whoever we are saying, like if you say tashi dele, it means that the person has done something that has caused something to feel very miserably. So tashi dele. If you say tashi dele, it depends on the tone also. So same word, in case means different thing. In one case, it means I wish you prosperity and great health. In other case, it means you are such a miserable failure. You know, it means it's a miserable failure, that someone is incapable of doing something right in any case. So therefore, same word, different meaning. And then another thing is that we should understand, like, for example, we have the word tukjeche, right? Tukjeche, thank you. But if we use it in a different tone, we say that tukjeche, means that mean I'm thanking you, it means that you have spoiled everything. Thank you for spoiling everything. So same word, different meaning because of different tone, different context, different situation. So everything should be considered. Most importantly, pronunciation and context. And then if you have a greater context of what is happening as a situation, then that also helps.
So for this, the first verse, when we look at the second line, Sakya Legshe Lin Tian Du. So Sakya is referring to the Keba, right?
Yes.
That's why it is Zozimba and not Zozimba.
Yes, because it's a pronoun. So
Okay.
pronoun will never represent a verb.
That's all. Okay, understand. Thank you.
Please make sure that you ask the same question in the group where I can answer the same, so that the students
I'm still trying to find a way to join the group. This.
Oh, you haven't joined the group, the Telegram?
No.
Oh,
Yes.
then,
I have problem with my phone capacity actually. Sorry.
Please
Go on.
you can send. So this time what I will do is I'll post the question and I'll answer it there myself. Myself. Oh, no need to. Lasso. For the question. Always appreciate the questions. Lasso. Now I will be for the recitation of the verse. So this is the verse of dedication. So it's more like thank you for the ability of having the class, that we're able to do that. We must understand that to have such class, even a class, if we understand it in the context of connecting karma, it takes a miracle for something like this to happen. It takes a teacher, but the teacher doesn't become a teacher without a student. And then the teacher must also have a somewhat understanding of what he's teaching. Not being great teacher, but a little bit of understanding of what he's teaching. Otherwise, he's going to teach something that is totally out of context. So therefore, we recite this verse of dedication, saying that most wonderfully we have completed the class, and that we hope that we can continue it as wonderfully and auspicious as we did today. So, so this particular line I have actually stolen it from one of the more famous verbs, but still which means may entire sentient beings without even a single being left behind, without parting, without departing, without parting, without separating from the virtuous Lama, gain the knowledge of path and the grounds, and achieve the excellent state of a mighty lotus, which is the higher giver. So with this verse, I would conclude today's class. Thank you very much for joining in today. I hope that this class was beneficial to everyone, as it was very much enjoyable and beneficial to me.